SIDS, this is sudden infant death syndrome. Basically, the kid will just die. There won't be any apparent reason. Usually they will stop breathing at night. It's pretty horrible. It is the highest cause of infant death in the United States. There's about 2,000 cases per year. On page 81, they list some correlations. They don't have exact causes, but they do have some correlations between those that die of SIDS and some other variables. The top three reasons that they list are sleeping on the stomach, and exposure to smoke, and then sleeping in the same bed as the parent. Less common, not breastfeeding, low birth weight, and then sleeping without a fan is what it words it in the book. The biggest thing that the research I've looked at talks about is making sure that they sleep on their backs. Back to sleep, they talk about. Another variable that the book doesn't really talk about here, it doesn't talk about specifically, but something we've talked about before, SES. And I don't think the book discusses it exactly, but it is pretty apparent. So if you look at some of these things, exposure to smoke, people from lower SES backgrounds are more likely to smoke. Sleeping in the same bed, maybe you're sleeping in the same bed because you don't have a bed for the kid. Low birth weight, not breastfeeding. These are all things that are related to SES. And you can even Google that. If you Google SIDS and SES, there's a lot of things that are going to show up. So it's a good topic if you want to look into it for a research project, if you want to talk about it in the discussions. SES is probably going to be related to SIDS. They actually have monitors now. I can't talk about the veracity of them, but the idea that they put the monitor on the kids and it's able to tell if they've stopped breathing. So something you might look into. With the breastfeeding, this is what the book says. Start off there. The benefits of breastfeeding for the baby are appropriate weight gain. There's less childhood obesity, gastrointestinal infections, and less respiratory infections. There is no evidence, though, that there's benefits in cognitive development or cardiovascular function. Breastfeeding also does provide antibodies, and they're usually better digested. One of my nephews, he had real issues with breast milk. It caused him a lot of issues. There are benefits also for breastfeeding for the mother. There's less breast cancer, less ovarian cancer, and then there's even, this kind of strange, a small increase in intelligence for women who do that. The mother obviously shouldn't breastfeed if she has HIV, tuberculosis, maybe taking some drugs that are not safe for the kid because that will pass through the breast milk. All this being said, some researchers have said that there is no long-term effect. It says this on page 83. There's no long-term effect between breastfeeding and between bottle feeding. So it's kind of like the Ferber method. There's researchers on both sides of this issue. One thing to think about, the breastfeeding is correlational stuff. So the women who breastfeed are wealthier, they're older, they're better educated. So breastfeeding, like some of the other things we've talked about, they might be better off more because of SES than anything else. And just kind of as a side note, if you can't breastfeed, you definitely shouldn't feel bad about it. Like I was saying with one of my nephews, when my sister was like, we're not going to breastfeed anymore, we're going to bottle feed, there were people that were opposed to that. They thought, breastfeeding's the best, you should always do that. But, he was throwing up, it was just running right through him. So he was actually losing weight being on breast milk. So if you can't do it, for whatever the reason is, you shouldn't let anybody make you feel like shameful for that. Just don't let people make you feel ashamed for breastfeeding, for the Ferber method, if that's what you decide to do. Anything you choose as a parent, that's a decision you make, and you shouldn't let other people, sway you too much on that kind of stuff. Here's a quote from WebMD that I thought kind of sums it up well. Whichever you choose to feed your baby, breast milk, formula, or a combination of both, the most important thing is that your baby is well fed, well cared for, and loved. So ditch the mommy guilt. I think that's a pretty good way to describe it. A little bit else on the nutritional needs. U.S. parents, they feed their babies too few fruits, too few vegetables, and way too much junk food. I talked about this in the course introduction. The most common vegetable for kids at 15 months old is French fries in America. It's not good. Something we will talk about throughout psychology, development, all these things. What's easy versus what's best to do for development. So you you feed a kid French fries to get them to be quiet. That's why you're doing that. They will scream for more. You will give them more just so they will quit screaming. Your objective there is to get them to quit crying. If you give them French fries all the time, your objective is not health. You're just trying to make the crying stop. A better way, as far as development goes and health, you have to kind of wait that crying out. And I know it's tough. It's like the sleep training. It's really tough to listen to a kid scream and cry and to not just give them whatever they need to make that stop. It's tough, but that's part of being a good parent and making sure that you're doing things the right way and not the easy way. Okay. Yeah, that's what a whole lot of this is. What's easy versus what's best. That's the nutritional stuff, the breastfeeding stuff. On the next few slides, we'll talk about motor skills and sensation and perception.